This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and today I'm with Joss Bigmore, the leader of Guildford Borough Council, and Paul Follows, the leader of Waverley Borough Council. And the interview is about their joint working together. The two councils are have more and more joint working, and so we're going to ask them about how that's going. Morning to both of you. Thank you for joining the Guildford Dragon this morning.
Morning, Martin.
Good morning, Martin.
And straight into it, what is the purpose of the joint working between the two borough councils? What are the benefits you're anticipating, and can you quantify them? Josh, if I can start with you, please.
Sure. I mean, I think there are effectively three drivers as to why we're exploring joint working with Waverley. Firstly, obviously every authority across the country is facing huge budgetary pressure, exacerbated by the COVID crisis, which is requiring us to look, at everything we do to find ways that we can deliver service more efficiently going forward to protect the excellent level of service and discretionary service that the councils currently provide. So there is a cost driver. There is also a resilience driver. That it's no surprise to anyone that councils everywhere have been getting smaller as our budgets have been getting smaller. And by combining with another authority, it gives us a chance to grow again and have a greater resilience in our service because there'll be more people around. And I think that's really important. I think, coming out of the pandemic, more and more people have been engaged with the council. People have become, hopefully temporarily vulnerable and realised the role that the council plays, and we need to protect that going forward. So I think the first two drivers. The third one is we all know that there is pressure from government to consolidate local authorities. We had the plan last year of the unitary plan for Surrey, and we would like to actually be on the front foot and say, look, Waverley and Guildford are two councils that want to be together in the future. Should that become government policy? So we kind of want to control our own destiny, and we see a lot of similarities between our boroughs and a lot of opportunities to work together. So I think they're the three drivers behind this endeavour, and I think they're equally weighted.
Okay, and Paul, have you? Presumably there has been work to quantify the benefits that you see from this joint working. Are they purely monetary benefits, or are there others you've identified?
Well, actually, I think we just want to say straight off the bat is that the finances might have been the driver to bring us to the table, but at no point have they ever been the only thing that we've discussed. And right from the get-go, every discussion we've had about this is what other non-financial benefits are there, both for each council and also for the residents of Guildford and Waverley. And really what we're trying to do here is, yes, we need to save money. Yes, we need to balance the books over the next few years, because quite literally nobody's going to help us do that if we don't help ourselves. But also, how can we be greater than the sum of our parts in the process? Are there services that we can be delivering better? Are there even opportunities for us to expand services, both in Guildford and Waverley, especially areas where we already do something a little bit different to other councils? And one area, for example, would be managing our housing stock. And we have housing stock and Guildford have housing stock. And there are areas, I think, of synergy that we can really develop beyond the financial. Obviously, we've got to make the financial work as well, but we really want to make it more than that. And it's always been more than that as far as I'm concerned, and I think as far as Guildford's concerned too.
So what's the scale of the savings? I know you say that financial savings are not the only thing, but nonetheless, they are an important part of this, aren't they? And
they are.
And what are the scale of the savings you've seen? Are we talking about hundreds of thousands, millions? What are we talking about?
Well, I think in terms of the overall amount that each council need to save over sort of the budget periods that we're talking about, we are in the orders of millions for the total. Annual savings that need to be done are sort of in the million plus bracket for us. What I think we would say is that we need to do something in order to start eating into these budget deficits. I don't think partnership between Guildford and Waverley is going to be everything all at once. And certainly, because we'll still be two separate councils, we'll still have an obligation, I think, to look at other ways to save money. But we are expecting this to be a big part of this budget challenge. And actually, one of the challenges I put to our councillors last week was that actually there's risk in doing nothing too. I mean, we would still have to find any money that we're not doing and not saving by working with Guildford, we would have to find in other ways. And I think at this point, that really is looking at cuts, which none of us want to pursue unless we absolutely have to.
Okay, now I live on the south edge of Guildford, Guildford town, and therefore quite close to the boundary with Waverley. And I must admit, you know, it's not a boundary that many of us recognize as being an important boundary. And there's a lot of similarity, in my view, between the two boroughs. What about you? What do you think, Paul? What are the similarities you see and the differences?
To be fair, I think there are a lot of similarities, and to be upfront, I studied in University of Surrey and I work still in Guildford, and quite a lot of people I think in Waverley do travel north to Guildford to work. So I think there's certainly a shared geography, there's a shared boundary, there's a shared economic sphere, I think, in the southwest of Surrey that encompasses us both quite nicely. Certainly in terms of transport infrastructure, everything is moving up through our most southern point in Hazelmere up through Guildford towards London. So there's a sort of focusing point up towards the northern part of Surrey and into London, where we work, I think, in that way. In terms of differences, I suppose there's the main difference for me is that Guildford is predominantly one homogenised town centre versus Waverley, which is a very disparate sort of set of different populations. I mean, in many respects, if you look at the numbers, Waverley is about the same population. It's a little bit bigger, but not massively so in terms of size. But the way our population is distributed is materially different to Guildford, and the dynamic is, I think, slightly different. So I think we probably have to think about that when we're talking about some of the work we're doing. But a lot of the way the councils work, I mean, so not everybody's running their own housing stock, as I mentioned, but we both do. So there's a big area of overlap there. We already do share some services in parking and things like that. So for us, I think there's a lot of places that we can work, and the differences are significantly outweighed by the similarities as far as I'm concerned.
Joss, what do you think? You also live on the southern side of Guildford town. Did you have a similar view?
Absolutely. I think, as Paul said, there are, the fundamental difference is we have half of our borough effectively lives in Guildford, and have the benefits and the costs of having a much more centralised urban area. Obviously, we have, the hospital, the university, and probably a more diverse business offering. But at the heart of it, the people, the geography, the current politics are all extremely similar, and I think it is it is a very complementary partnership with us.
Okay, so how long has this initiative been going on? Is it just since the last election, the last borough council election in 2019, or was there work before that?
Sticking with me.
Yes, please.
Yes, so I think really it came out of the work that the boroughs and districts commissioned out of KPMG last year, when we were looking at the kind of unitary threat, to say, or threat or opportunity, however your politics are. And I think that it would be, it would be a shame if that work that we put into those workshops didn't come to something. And Paul and myself, and prior to that, John Ward and Caroline Reeves had many discussions about, well, actually, look, we already have some shared service between Guildford and Waverley. This has come up over the years, over the previous years, but never really delivered anything. Is this the time when we've really got, these three drivers that I mentioned, the cost, the resilience, and future reorganisation? Is this the time when we can really make it stick? And I think, Caroline and John started it, and hopefully me and Paul will follow it on, and then Peter and Jan after us if things go to plan. But to be honest, this is a pretty apolitical, decision. This is about those reasons that we've mentioned, and not really politics. And any successful integration will last a lot longer than my administration or Paul's administration, 2023. If for things really to start drop out, there were some councils in Suffolk that we spoke to. It's been going on for 10 years. And they're still finding different ways, because obviously contracts run out, and that you have to coordinate various things. So I think this is will be an ongoing process, and hopefully deliver benefits to both authorities in a lot of years to come.
Okay, now you said it's apolitical, so are Conservative members at GBC supportive of this initiative?
I think that all discussions that have been had, we had informal group discussions with every group, so GGG, Labour, Lib Dems, Conservatives, and my own group. We had in public a executive advisory board last night, and I think everyone is cautiously constructive. There are obviously people that are worried. It's a fundamental difference. If you have, a single chief executive across the two authorities and less senior directors, officers, will have less time at a very senior level to deal with members. Okay. However, what's the other choice? What's the other option? So I think, people are trying to be constructive, but there are obviously people worried about staff and redundancies and frontline services. But this is very much a top-down move. This is not about taking resources off the front line when we think people need them the most.
Okay, and Paul, what about in Waverley on the politics of this? Are people supportive across the spectrum?
I think probably the thing I need to say first is a little bit of a shout out to Surrey County Council for doing something that nobody else has managed to do, which is unify all of the boroughs in a common cause in fighting the unitary bid.
Right.
And in doing that, allowed us to have the sorts of discussions that made us realise that actually there is some work that Guildford and Waverley could do to really push this forward. And I think that got us to the table in a way that was quite constructive. We've done similar. We've been having talks amongst the different groups, and I hosted a briefing for all councillors a couple of weeks ago, and it was fairly constructive. I mean, it's exactly the same as Guildford. There will be people that are against this, where there was a little bit of a current of, well, the previous Conservative administration here tried it with the previous Conservative administration at Guildford, and it didn't come to anything. So are you guys going to do any better? And I think the difference is that the finances have moved even further down the road, and there is risk in action, but there is also risk in inaction, and I think broadly that's understood across the political spectrum, and actually you can only be so against this without coming up with other options, really. If there are other options, we were always happy to listen to them, and we'll always remain happy to listen to them. We're still going to have to pursue other opportunities to make savings anyway, so if they've got options, I'm hoping that they bring them to the table. But broadly, I think everybody understands why we're doing this. We're going to do it in a cautious and pragmatic way, because not only because it's a big deal, but also because we have to protect our staff and make sure services stay positive and working for residents while we do this.
Okay, now you said about protecting staff there, but inevitably there'll be job losses, won't there? Because otherwise, how do you make the savings?
There's lots of different ways to make savings through this. I think at the senior end of the spectrum, there would definitely need to be some level of reorganisation. I know Guildford's had a bit more of a recent experience of this with its previous reorganisation, but I think at the top end, at the management end, I think that would end up being the case, particularly if we're having a shared chief executive and shared management team, as I know is the initial aim of most of us. But actually, from my point of view, most of the borough council staff, we would need to carry on doing their jobs in Guildford and in Waverley. A lot of the savings come from scale of joint working. They come from sharing resources more efficiently. They come from shared procurement in the longer run. So I do reject the gut reaction that it means that there's going to be lots of staff losses. There are lots of different ways this generates savings for us beyond that. And actually, at the end of the day, councils are a people business. The services are delivered and managed and run by people. So, and there's still a Guildford and still a Waverley that needs those services done. So we can't just get rid of all the people.
Okay, and back to you if I can, Josh. So, I mean, GBC has just gone through, or is still going through, a reorganisation, a rationalisation to. So, is there yet more to squeeze out of this stone?
I think from a Guildford point of view, future Guildford, in order to close the budget gap, we have things we can do ourselves, and that was effectively the future Guildford project within Guildford. That lemon has been squeezed pretty dry now, so hence why we're looking for any opportunities to work with Waverley. Then there are, other ways we can increase revenue, which we are looking at, but it's difficult because at the moment a lot of people are quite cash strapped. So we start increasing fees and charges on a lot of things. There could be some consequences that you don't want. One thing I would say about the job losses and at the senior level, these people are public servants, a lot of them choose to work in a local authority because they want to work for residents and delivering public service. You know, they're not, you know, not like me that sold their soul to the city. They're people that really do believe in public service. And ultimately, this is about protecting services to residents. And if that means that they have to go and find another job or work somewhere else, then they're willing to do it. And I think the attitude of the senior management across certainly Guildford and those I've spent any time with at Waverley has been incredibly admirable. And this is, this is I'm saying they're all completely selfless individuals, but it's a consequence of they've been in this long enough to know that if you want to protect the very good level of discretionary service we have in Guildford and in Waverley, then this is, you know, the least bad alternative, and they're willing to make that sacrifice, and all credit to them, to be honest.
Okay, now could this initiative, could it actually develop into the formation of a de facto unitary authority or an official unitary authority? Or
can I take that one?
Okay.
I'm sure we're going to both want a bunch of this one. Yeah.
Does that require, presumably that requires a new level of initiative at county level?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been one of the people that have actually argued that unitaries aren't a bad idea, because local government in 3 tiers is quite confusing for residents. I mean, it's quite confusing for some councillors. Mostly 3 tiers in Waverley. I think it's mostly 2 in Guildford, but some 3. And actually, the bit that is sort of the odd one out is actually Surrey, and we should be localising services as much as possible, as efficiently as possible. So for me, unitaries are actually a really good idea, but not this mega 1.2 million person unitary, but one a bit more localised. So maybe 3 or even 4 unitaries out of what we now call Surrey. Where I am with this, one of the possible benefits of such a collaboration here is that firstly, we could potentially attract a third partner at some point to this if it's working and working well, which we hope it will be, but also that really we can demonstrate, firstly, we're self-sufficient of Surrey and we can still be a viable entity, which is one of the arguments they were making that we all weren't. But actually we could be the nucleus of an even stronger organisation, a unitary in our own right, or a combined authority, depending on which direction was taken, as an alternative to the Surrey project, or even as an alternative to Surrey itself.
Okay, but do you think then that this initiative will add pressure towards that resolution, or is it still in the hands of the county council to decide what to do with that?
I think the county council's been under significant pressure from practically everywhere, as has the idea of these single unitaries in general, from a genuine upswell of frustration and in some cases anger from borough councils across the country where this has been tried, and from all different political parties, I would add as well, including, I mean, most of the counties most of the boroughs in the country are still Conservative, and most of them were against it too, because of the lack of consultation and consideration of anybody else in the process, which in the way that they did it. So I would imagine that the single unitary option is going to be on the back burner for a while anyway. They didn't campaign for it either in the county election, so I wouldn't argue they have a mandate for it either.
Okay, and back to you, Jos, if I may. So Paul intimated there that you might be looking for another council to join you in this initiative. Can you give us a clue there who we talk about? Is it Woking or Mole Valley?
Well, I mean, I'm not choosy, Martin. It's very early days. I mean, we all meet regularly with Surrey leaders. Everyone is in, you know, quite a similar boat, but you know, some councils have more issues internally to work through before they really feel able, or would feel able, you know, to engage properly in this process. I think also, you know, my preference is, you know, let's try this and get this thing in motion, rather than having another voice at the table to try, you know, which could further delay and complicate things. And you know, every day we don't do this is another day when there's potential savings being spent. So I think you know, we have found, you know, there's been far too many metaphors about marriages and dance partners and all this kind of thing. So I don't really want to go there. But we have Guildford and Waverley are very natural partners. We have, you know, we get on very well as 2 management groups and as 2 executive groups. And I think we now the time is right that we can actually, you know, drive this process through. in order to protect the services for our residents. I think your previous question about unitary, one thing that you need to make clear, there is no desire at this stage for any merger of the councils. So there will still be 2 separate councils serving 2 sets of residents. And there's quite a long document, which again brings back bad memories, but a memorandum of understanding type document, which is a vision for the partnership that we developed in conjunction with the LGA. And one of the key things there, it says that you cannot impose anything on the other council that the other council doesn't want to do. So I think it's very, there's some very clear rules and guidelines about how we're going to do this, and that sovereignty argument is important. Now, obviously, if we get too sovereign and don't share anything, there's going to be no savings. So and it will evolve over time. But at this stage, there is no desire from either council to merge councils at all. No one has suggested it, and no one wants it. Okay, well, Just Bigmore, Paul Follows, thank you both very much for joining the Dragon and talking about this subject, which is important, I think, obviously on the local administration. I hope that we can get further reports as this initiative progresses. Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah.